by Dr. Harichandra Kumar. Sir is going to talk about inferential statistics, various tests of significance. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Sir, can you please give the right to share my slides, please?
So now you can share it, sir.
Yeah.
Brother.
Able to see my slide, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Right. So thank you. Yeah. Very good afternoon to all of you. Hope. Yeah. So no one is sleeping now. Everyone is awake. Yeah. So this session is in the continuation of what Nair sir has already explained. He has taught about what are the basic concept in test of statistical significance, especially statistical inference, how to go ahead. What are the fundamental concepts in test of statistical significance? So one thing is very clear. If the fundamental concepts are not very clear, what will happen? You are doing the analysis, so you will come across a lot of what is called constraints or a lot of what is called problems. If you want to solve problems in a good manner, so you should know the basic concept of it. If the concept is not clear, if you just come across some issues, or so if you face some issues related to the analysis and the interpretations, you will not be able to sort it out. So the fundamental concept should be very clear. We are not, you should learn all the concepts, all the statistical methods. No, what are the very essential concepts related to statistical inference? You should know. Then only you will be able to do justice with the statistical analysis and interpretations. Anyway, people do analysis, but so just if your students has brought results to you, so you know,
Your voice is breaking.
very. So that is what in the initial, the first talk. Sir, is it clear now, sir?
Yeah, now clear, Hari. Earlier it was breaking. Now clear. Hello, Hari?
Hello.
Hello?
Yes. I can, sir. Clear, sir.
No, still there is some problem connection in this.
Oh. One, I'll just put my.
Probably video you, you mute video, then probably.
Try now.
Yeah.
Hello, Hari. Hello.
Hello, sir, you are able to hear me?
Now I am able to hear. Now we are able to hear. Yes.
Okay.
Earlier it was not. Yes.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So this session is mainly on choosing appropriate test of statistical significance. So I'll be creating a lot of scenarios from different specialties, from pre-para, medical, or what surgical. So different examples I will create it. Okay, and I will sensitize you what test use for comparing or what test you have to use it for this situation. So most of the situation I will be trying to cover because the basic level of analysis we are not going to the advanced one. We are going to cover only the basic level of test of statistical significance because if you want to cover the statistical methods, different statistical methods is not possible because plenty of statistical methods are there. What are the very basic level of test of statistical significance is required? Only those things only we are going to discuss. Fine. Say I am posing a question. This is my research question. What is the prevalence of CKD among diabetes patients on treatment with more than 10 years of duration? So question is very clear. It's a research question. What is the prevalence of CKD among, or what is the prevalence of diabetic nephropathy among diabetes patients on treatment with more than 10 years of duration? Fine. So your study population is patients with more than 10 years, diabetes patients with more than 10 years of duration. What is my outcome variable? Whether the patient is having diabetic nephropathy or not. What is my variable here? CKD or not, or diabetic nephropathy or not. It is a categorical in nature. So what I will do to get the answer for this question, as Sarah has already told, what is the statistical inference mean, or what is the definition of statistical inference? I'm just going to show the same thing by using a diagrammatic way. So first you are identifying your population of diabetes patients with more than 10 years of duration. So this is your target population. Then after that, what you will do? You will be identifying the sampling population. Sampling population is nothing but the population from where you are going to sample. From where you are going to select the samples. Because being in JIPMER, my sampling populations are diabetes patients who are coming to JIPMER. Diabetes patients with more than 10 years of duration coming to JIPMER. Because this is my catchment area. Because I have confined my study to the certain settings. And what are the patients who are coming to my what is called catchment area? That is what is the sampling population. Since you are in AVMC, so the diabetes patients who are coming to AVMC, because you are confining your study to certain settings, so therefore those patients, the patients who are coming to AVMC, that is your sampling population. So sampling population is nothing but it is a population from. Sorry, some sound is coming.
Yeah. Can you unmute others? Moderator. Unmute others.
Fine. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So it is a population from where you are going to sample it. So after that, what do you do? So okay, I'm being in JIPMER, I am decided to conduct my study. Diabetes patients with more than 10 years of duration coming to JIPMER. After that, what I will do? I will select the samples. I am not going to study the whole population, right? I am not going to study the whole population. I am not going to study the whole sampling population. I am going to select the samples. What is the sample? Sample is a representative of the population. Sample is the true representative of the population. So what I will do after that? I will study the samples. I will attack the samples. Then I will process, I will just collect the data from the samples. I'm not going to conduct the study in the whole population, all the units in the sampling population, all the units in the target population. I'm confining my study to sample, and I will be collecting data from the sample. After that, what I will do? I will be completely studying the samples. I'll get the result, right? So I collect the data and I will analyze it, okay, and I will get the result. Now the question, whatever the result I got it from the sample, Is it applicable only to the sample? Or it should be applicable to the target population? So we wish, because since the sample is the representative of the target population, since the sample is the true representative of the target population, whatever the results we obtain from the sample, we should be able to generalize into the target population. So whatever the results we are getting from the sample, we should be able to generalize into the target population. Okay. So fine. So we are going to generalize the result obtained from the sample to the target population. Let us suppose if we are not able to, generalize, if we are not able to generalize the result obtained from the sample to the target population, what will happen? You just imagine. Okay. Now in research, in biomedical research, in most of the research, what we are doing, we are just selecting the sample and we are conducting the study, we are collecting data from the sample. And whatever the results we are getting from the sample, based on that, we will be making an inference about the population. We are not studying the population as a whole. Instead of that, we are selecting a sample and we are studying the sample. And based on the results obtained from the sample, we will make an inference about the population. This is what is called as a statistical inference. That inference about the population based on the result obtained from the sample. Because we are not studying the populations completely. We are studying only the sample. And what we are going to do, we are going to make an inference about the population based on the sample. Why we are able to make inference about the population based on the sample? Because sample is the representative of the population. If the sample is not the true representative of the population, so we will not be able to make an inference about the population based on the sample. Therefore, sample is very, very important. That's what we are going to discuss tomorrow. Sampling and sample size and all. Sample should be proper. Sample should be proper in terms of its representative, its representation, in terms of its number, both. That we will talk tomorrow. Therefore, in medical research, what actually we are doing it, since we are not studying population completely, we are always going with the sample survey. We are collecting data from the sample and we are going to generalize the result obtained from the sample to the target population. That process is called as a statistical inference. Therefore, we need a statistical inference. Why we need a statistical inference? Because of the reason that we are not studying the population completely. Instead of that, we are studying only a small number of what is called subjects, that is called a sample, and we are going to make an inference about the population based on the sample. This is called as a statistical inference. Let us suppose if we are not able to generalize it. If we are not able to generalize it, why? Because of the sample is not proper. Sample is not representing the population. Sample size is not sufficient enough. So in this situation, if the sampling is not proper, sample size is not adequate, then we will not be able to make inference about the population based on the sample. If we are not able to generalize, if we are not able to make statistical inference, or if we are not able to generalize the result obtained from the sample to the target population, what is the problem? Yes, there is a problem of external validity. Your study is not externally valid. Why it is not externally valid? Because this is not applicable to the target population. Whatever the research you made it is applicable only to the sample you are selected. It may not be applicable to the target population. Because of the reason that sample may not be proper. Sample size may not be adequate. Therefore, that study has no external validity because the strength of the study is very low. So always whenever we are doing a research, we want to have an external validity of the study. So if you want an external validity, we should be able to generalize the target population. So that process is called as statistical inference. Now, how to make this statistical inference? We want a tool. How to make an inference about the population based on the sample? Because we are processing, we are just research, we are analyzing it, and based on that, we should be able to make an inference about the population That process is called as a statistical inference, and the tool that we used for making statistical inference is called as inferential statistics. It is statistics to make an inference about the population based on the sample. That is what is called as inferential statistics, or in other way, it is a test of statistical significance. So different tests of statistical significance are there. We'll see one by one. Whenever you are talking about statistical inference, what is coming to your mind? Significance, right? So you are just immediately, what is coming to your mind? Significance. Whenever we are talking about the significance, as Nair sir is already explained, he has told you also, when we are talking about the significance, what is coming to your mind? One of the most interested yield in statistical analysis. That is only one letter. This is the yield. Whenever any researcher is doing analysis, they will not be bothered about anything. They will be keep on searching for what? Keep on searching for this letter. That is what is your p-value. So what is the p-value? No other issue. Whether I want to know whether my p-value is less than 0.05 or more than 0.05. So we are coming across every year. If the p is less than 0.05, our results started. So they should what is it called? Desperate. If p is less than 0.05, if you are telling the your p is less than 0.05, they will be very happy. Okay. So we are very fascinated to watch this letter P. This is one of the most interested yield of statistical analysis. Okay. So what will happen? You'll be very, if P is less than 0.05, you'll be very happy. So I got the result. Sometimes you will do like this also. So you'll be said that P is less than 0.05. If other way around, you'll be so sad. Please remember, P based on the P value. So you cannot say that your research is good or research is bad. It is just a decision. Okay. It is for taking a decision whether to accept your null hypothesis or to reject your hypothesis. Whether to accept or reject your hypothesis or not. So P is less than 0.05. We used to say, okay, I got a Nobel Prize. If P is greater than 0.05, I lost my Nobel Prize. It is not so. It is telling you whether to accept or reject your null hypothesis or not. Okay. So this is one of the very important yielding tests of statistical significance. We will see how to get this p-value in different scenarios. So as Sir was telling in the just before, he was telling that yes, there is a funnel approach. Just suppose the same thing it is here also. Here you see, this is what? This is the data. The data is input. Okay, a lot of data you are just giving inside. What is this machine? This is not a funnel. I say that it's a crushing machine. It's a crusher. Okay, what is a crusher? Crusher is nothing but a statistical methods. So this is a crusher. Lot of processes are there inside the crusher. Okay, lot of statistical methods are there. We'll give a lot of input to the data. Input to this, what is called a method. Input to the machine. What you'll get? You'll get an output. Okay, the crushed one. Okay, that crushed one is nothing but the result. Fine. So a lot of data input, and finally you'll come out with a result. Whether to accept your, what is your result? The answer for your research question. What is the result? Result is whether to accept or reject your null hypothesis. This is what it gives. It gives the answer for your research question, or it tells you whether you have to accept your null hypothesis or to reject your null hypothesis. This is what is happening in statistical analysis. Whenever you are doing this statistical analysis, see this one, there are a lot of layers. This is very, very important. So it is a lot of layers. Each layer represents different sets of analysis. So for getting one output, we should go through different analysis. So what are the analysis required for getting an outcome? It is based on your research question. It is based on your hypothesis. It is based on your sample size. It is based on your study design. It is based on the data type. It is based on the number of grows. It is based on many other factors. How many layers are there? Fine. So this is what it is happening. So we are giving input. The input is the data. So it is given to the machine. It's a crushing machine. We can say that. So this crushing machine is nothing but a statistical methods. Different statistical methods are there. So it will go through different statistical methods, and finally you will get the result. Result is nothing but what is the answer for your research question, whether to accept or reject your null hypothesis. So this is what we are going to do it. How to do this? This is what now we'll discuss it. So this is the, you know very well about it. So lot of tools. Okay, so lot of tools. For example, if I just go into the workshop, lot of tools. So if you want to do, sorry, if you have to remove a screw, or if you have to tighten a bolt, what instrument you have to take it? So you have to identify the most appropriate tool for your purpose, right? So if I want to remove a screw, I will be using screwdriver. If I want to just take what's called one bolt, I want to use the spanner, appropriate size spanner. Fine. Similarly, statistics also, it is just like this. A lot of tools are there, lot of statistical methods are there. What you have to do, you have to identify the right tool. This is very, very important. Okay. So we are seeing that there are similar tools. So there is a saying that similar and same. There are two words. Similar and same are not same, but they are similar. Okay. Similarity may be there. Similarity doesn't imply that they are similar. There is no scope for similarity in statistical analysis. Okay. So they may be similar. It doesn't mean that they are same. So similarity in many aspects, different aspect, but it doesn't mean that, okay, we can use both the tool, both statistical method for same purpose. That is not applicable in statistics, because there is a specific tool, specific method for specific statistical analysis. So the task is that, the challenge is that, so you have to choose the most appropriate statistical methods. One more thing, whenever we are using the word you have to choose, it's implied that there is a choice. But here there is no choice also. You have to choose without choice. How to choose without choice, that is what we are going to discuss now. See here. So let us suppose you identify the tool. So from this one, you identify the tool. First thing is you have to identify the tool. Second message is that you have to identify, you should know how to use it properly. Even if you identify the tool, if you are not able to use it properly, so it will be disaster. The outcome may be completely wrong. It will give a result, but the result may not be correct. So even if you are identifying the tool, okay, so you should know how to use it. See the first method and for second method. So if you are using the, identify the tool, but see the picture, you are using it you are using it in the whatever I shown in the second picture. Like that, if you are using it, what would have happened? It will bounce back. Okay. So not only the identification, you should know how to use it properly. If you are not using it properly, so whatever the results we are getting, it may be wrong. It may be disaster, I would say. Fine. Another one, you have to use the right tool. See, if I want to cut an apple, so should I use this tool? So the purpose will be met. It will be cut. But what we are doing it, you are overdoing the things, right? So this tool is not required, because this tool will cut the apple, but whether this tool is the right tool to cut it, fine. So this is the one. Another one, you see, there is a rat. For killing the rat, should I use the AK-47? So you can kill it, but it will kill. But is it required? Fine. So you are overdoing it. Please don't overdo the analysis. Whatever the statistical methods required to get the answer for your research question, do it and stop it there. Whatever statistical methods required to test your hypothesis, you got an answer. Whether to accept my null hypothesis or to reject my null hypothesis, stop it there. Don't do anything further on. Fine. So don't overdo the analysis. Or if you are overdoing it, that means you have started torturing the data. Once you started torturing the data will bounce back. So you do the analysis, what is required for getting answers for a research question. You do the analysis, what is required to take a decision whether to accept my null hypothesis and reject the null hypothesis. Once you you got a decision, you stop it there. Don't do anything more on it. If you are doing anything more on it, so you are overdoing the analysis. It is called as data torture. See, I'll give an example. See, you are overdoing it, right? For cutting a pizza, whether this instrument is required. Fine. So purpose will met, but you are overdoing the analysis. See, let us suppose the patient has come to you like this, because you are a clinician. Let us say the patient has come to you like this. So for knowing what is its problem, will you do clinical evaluation, radiological evaluation, or laboratory evaluations, biochemical, immunological, all investigations you will be doing it or not? Because it is well evident what is its problem, right? So you got the answer for the question. What is this problem? You have the answer for it. Not if you are doing anything extra on it, so you are overdoing the things. So it is very, very important as far as the statistics is concerned, research is concerned. Don't overdo the analysis once you achieve your objective. You stop it there. If you are doing anything over it, that is not considered, that analysis is not considered in the beginning, in the planning stage itself. Therefore, that analysis will give you a spurious results. Therefore, please don't do it. Now, how to identify? What is the criteria for identifying appropriate statistical tools? First one, sir, you should have a research question. Research question should be very clear and to the point. Your hypothesis should be formulated very beautifully. Hypothesis should be formulated properly. Your object should be formulated very clear. This is very, very important. Your analysis is based on research question. Your analysis is based on hypothesis. Your analysis is based on objective. Whatever the way you are analyzing for superiority trial or non-inferiority trial, and what is called equivalence trial. For example, if you are doing an RCT, we'll be seeing it, whether it's a superiority trial, whether it's a non-inferiority trial, whether it's an equivalence trial. So based on the objective. Similarly, study design, whether you have a cross-sectional comparative, case control, cohort, nested case control, or RCT, what is the study design? Next one, a data type. Yesterday we discussed whether you have a categorical or ordinal or a quantitative. Then number of groups. How many groups you are having? One group, two groups, and more than two groups. So nature of groups, whether a dependent group or independent group. Independent groups means that they are purely independent in all aspects. For example, cases and controls, intervention and placebo, exposure versus non-exposure, males versus females. So like that, they are called independent groups. What are the dependent groups? Dependent means before and after. That means it's a classical dependent groups, before and after. From same group of subjects, we are collecting at 2 time points before and after. They are called as dependent samples or dependent groups. Similarly, next one is a sampling method. What sampling method you have used? Whether you have a random sampling or non-random sampling. In random sampling, whether you have used what type of sampling? Simple random sampling, stratified sampling, systematic sampling, cluster sampling, stratified cluster. So what sampling method you have used, that is also another criteria for identifying what is the most appropriate statistical test you would like to have, you want to have to analyze your data. Next one is sample size. So sample size is, yesterday we discussed about what is called, whenever you are making the subgroups, what is going to happen. So sample size is another criteria for identifying the appropriate statistical methods. Fine. So these are the broad criteria for identifying the appropriate statistical test. Okay. With this background, we'll start one by one. So the statistical analysis, the whole statistical analysis broadly classified into 2. Okay, as we discussed yesterday, whenever you are having the data, first you decide what is the behavior of the data, how the data behaves. Okay, so if the data behaves in what way, whether the data behaves in normal pattern, okay, whether it follows normal distribution or it follows non-normal distribution. Okay, so in the statistical analysis, okay, we are just classifying the 2 based on the behavior of the data, behavior in terms of whether they are normal or non-normal. If the data follows normal distribution, as I told you, normal distribution is applicable only for the quantitative variables. Ordinal data and nominal data will never follow normal distribution because it is a category, it is not a value. Therefore, if the data follows normal distribution, so we will be using parametric test. If the data is not following normal distributions, we have to use non-parametric test. Non-parametric test is also called as distribution-free test. It is free from normal distribution. Okay. If the data follows normal distribution, we will be going with the parametric test. If the data is not following normal distributions, we will be going with the non-parametric test. Because 2 baskets. Okay. This basket, parametric basket, is having a lot of analysis, and non-parametric basket is having a number of analysis. What you have to do? You have to identify which test we have to use, whether parametric or non-parametric. It is based on what distribution it follows. Okay. So after identify, for example, if it follows normal distribution, you want to have parametric test, then you have to identify the appropriate parametric test. If the data is not following normal distribution, so you will be going with a non-parametric test, and you have to identify the statistical test from non-parametric basket, and you have to identify the most appropriate non-parametric test. So there are two things. First one, whether you have to go with the parametric or you have to go with the non-parametric. If it is parametric, in parametric, which test you have to use it? You have to identify it. The second one, if it is for non-parametric, so which test you have to identify it. Whether to go with the parametric or non-parametric, it is based on whether it follows normal distribution or not. This is the first criteria you have to do it. Okay, first criteria you have to do it whether it's a parametric or non-parametric. Now what I am going to discuss? I am going to discuss within the parametric, so what test you have to take it. Within the non-parametric, how to identify the appropriate statistical test. That is what we are going to discuss now. Let us suppose we have the data. Yesterday we discussed. I am just telling what Dr. Amala said yesterday. I am going to re-emphasize again. We have the data. Data may be quantitative, data may be ordinal, or data may be nominal. These are the three types of data. If it is quantitative, what you will do? Yesterday we discussed. We are going with normal, whether it is non-normal. Quantitative data, whether it is normal or non-normal. If the data is quantitative and normally distributed, how it will be expressed? It will be expressed as mean with the standard deviation. Fine. It will be expressed as mean. That means mean and standard deviation is applicable only for the quantitative data which are normally distributed. And if the data is non-normally distributed, how will you express it? You will express with a mean with IQR, mean with a interquartile range. These are the statistical measures we are going to use it. Because median IQR is applicable when the data is non-normal data. Okay, now let us suppose it's ordinal data. Ordinal data can also be expressed as median, provided it should have more number of categories, say 7 or more. So you have the mild, moderate, severe 3 categories, median should not be used. If the ordinal data has 7 or more than 7 categories, so you can use median as a measure of standard tendency. So you can use the measure for summarizing it. Otherwise, no, you should not use it. Let us suppose if we have the nominal data, how will you express it? The data will be expressed as frequency, proportion, and percentage. Okay, so this is the statistical methods or statistical measure for summarizing the data. This is the first step you have to use it. Whether you have a quantitative, ordinal, or nominal. Nominal data will always express as frequency and proportion. Ordinal data can be expressed as frequency, proportion, or percentage. And median can also be used, but one condition is that the condition is like this: you should have more number of categories. And if you have the quantitative data, first you assess whether it is normal or non-normal. If it is normal, go with the mean with the standard deviation. If the data is not following normal distributions, you have to go with the median with the range. That is what Dr. Amara said yesterday. So this is the background. With this background, we'll see how to analyze categorical data. How to analyze categorical data. You know what is categorical data. So we'll see one by one. It is a test of association. I am using the word association. The word association meant for categorical variables. Whenever I am saying that there is an association, it implies that the variables you are having is categorical. Association meant for categorical variable. Relations meant for quantitative variables. Please remember this one. Association is for categorical variables, relations for quantitative variables. Whenever I am seeing the test of association, that means I am going to deal with categorical variables. Relation means I am going to deal with a quantitative variables. Okay, I think it's clear to you. We'll see. I have variable 1. That is my nominal and ordinal. Okay, so nominal and ordinal are categoricals, right? Either nominal or ordinal. I have variable 2. That is also nominal and ordinal. 2 variables. I want to know, is there an association between the variables? But it is very clear that both are categorical in nature. Categorical means either nominal and ordinal. Nominal or ordinal. Right? Let us suppose, see my first variables: gender, age group, domicile, study intervention or control group, comorbidity status, DM is there or not, hypertension is or not, HB profile. because the malignant or benign or intermediate, in exposure status, exposed or non-exposed. These are the one variable. And another variable is clinical outcome, dead or alive. Treatment outcome, complete response, partial response, and no response. Etiology, quality of life, I'm just categorized that poor, fair, moderate, and good. Treatment or surgical profile, signs and symptoms at presentation, and severity of disease. I want to know the association between gender with the clinical outcome, age group with the clinical outcome, domicile with etiology, comorbidity status with the clinical outcome, HP profile with the clinical outcome, exposure status with the what's called etiology. Fine. So both side, yes, it's a categorical nature. So this is called as association, test of association. Both variables are categorical in nature. Fine. I'll give another example. That means both variables are categorical variables. See this example. So you know this is a classical example. Fine. So it's a smoking status, categorical in nature. So malignancy, whether they're malignant or not. Both are categorical in nature. I want to know, is there a relation between, is there an association between smoking status with the lung malignancy? Fine, both are categorical. So another example you see, is there an association between symptoms at presentation and etiology among the patients with the CKD? Let us suppose symptoms at presentation, because whether the fatigueness, yes or no. So symptom A, B, C, D, yes or no. Etiology means there are two etiologies, the CKD patients with non-etiology and CKD patients with the unknown etiology. Non-etiology and unknown etiology. So in this case, both are categorical in nature. Symptoms, yes or no. Etiology, non or unknown. Fine. So this is the one example. Both variables are categorical in nature. Fine. So take another example. Is there any difference in the mortality between community acquired AKI and hospital acquired AKI? Because I have two AKI status, whether they're hospital acquired or community acquired. And this is my categorical variable. What is my other variable? Otherwise mortality. Yes or no, mortal died or not. Fine. So both are categorical in nature. I want to know, is there an association between these two? What I want to prove? What is my intention? My intention that, okay, the community acquired AKI is having mortality is more. Mortality may be more among the patients with the community acquired AKI when compared to hospital acquired AKI. That is the hypothesis I want to prove it. Fine. Therefore, both are categorical variables, both are categorical in nature. My hypothesis is that the mortality rate is more among the patients with the community acquired AKI when compared to hospital acquired AKI. This is the hypothesis I want to test it. Fine. So for testing that one, first I am seeing what type of variable I am having. Mortality, yes or no. AKI, hospital or community AKI. Both are categorical in nature. Therefore, it is a test of association. Take one more example. Is there an association between the gender and clinical outcome among the patients undergone PTCA? Gender is male or female. Okay, clinical outcome, whether the patients record restenosis or not. Okay, outcome is good or bad among the patients undergone PTCA. So both are categorical in nature. Outcome is success or failure, good or bad. Gender is male or female. Fine. Another example. Fine. See, similarly, another example is see, is there an association between DM and recovery status among the patients undergone NSCT? What is my hypothesis? My hypothesis would have the patients with the comorbidity may have what's called a poor response when compared to the patients without DM. There is an association between DM and recovery status. What way? DM gives poor prognosis when compared to patients without DM. Okay, so both are categorical in nature. DM status, yes or no. Outcome is response is good or bad. NR or CR. No response and complete response. No response means I am considering a partial response and no response together. Fine. Both are categorical in nature. Fine. So how to analyze this one? This analysis is called as chi-square test or Fisher-Sexa test. This is the first test we are dealing with. Chi-square or Fisher-Sexa test. It is a test of association. When we will be using it? Whenever you are using the chi-square or Fisher-Sexa test, it means that the both variables should be categorical in nature. Categorical means either in terms of nominal or in terms of ordinal. This is the first test you are just dealing with. So most of the statistical methods, whenever you are doing a research, definitely you have the categorical variables and you will be using the chi-square test. chi-square test is a test of association. That means both variables should be categorical in nature. This is about the first analysis. So whenever you are using chi-square, please remember chi-square test cannot be used for causal and temporal relationship. It will tell you whether there is a relation, there is an association or not. Chi-square test, that's what a chi-square method tests only the association. It will tell you whether it is associated or not associated, and it is not for establishing cause and effect relationship. It is not for assessing or establishing temporal relationship. In simple sense, we can say that chi-square should not be used for establishing causal or temporal relationship, but it will tell you whether these variables are associated or not, whether this association is spurious or not spurious. So based on our clinical sense, based on our biological sense, you have to decide. Okay, so please remember, it is not for any establishing causal relationship, causal and effect relationship, and it should not be used for temporal relationship. It will tell you whether there is an association, whether that association is significant or not. Nothing more than that. Fine. This is about the first analysis. Then coming to the next one, comparison of two dependent or related samples for a categorical outcome. Two dependent, whenever you are talking dependent means what? Before and after, right? I told you before and after. What is an outcome? Outcome is categorical nature. Okay, before and after, outcome is categorical in nature. Simple, I'll show you an example. Is there any change in the severity over time among patients with a CKD on treatment? Fine. So this is my question. So what I will do, I have a CKD patient. Okay, I will assess their severity at baseline. Okay, at severity as baseline. Then after that, started giving the treatment. The patients on treatment again. Okay, I will assess it and say that whether they have the mild or moderate severe. What is the level of severity? Mild or moderate and severe. I am combining mild and moderate together and severe. Two groups I have it. Mild and moderate and severe. I will assess it. Again, after 6 months of the same group of subjects, same patients, after 6 months, again I will assess it. I will classify what proportion is mild or moderate and what proportion is having severe disease. What is my intention? My intention is to assess, is there any change in the severity status over time? Severity has come down or not? Fine. So after treatment, 60% of the severe disease has come down to 30%. 40% of the mild and moderate is after 6 months. So it has improved to 60 or 70%. That means the longitudinal changes in the categorical variables. So what I will assess it, I will assess what is the proportion of the categories in the beginning, what is the proportion of severe disease, or what is the proportion of the mild or moderate illness. And the same thing I will assess after 6 months also, what proportion is having severe disease and what proportion is having mild or moderate disease. And is there any longitudinal changes over a period of time with regard to the severity is concerned? Okay, it is assessed as a categorical, right? Right. But for assessing categorical variables at two time points on the same group of subjects, therefore two proportions, proportion at baseline and proportion after 6 months. This is what is called as change in proportion over time, or in other way, comparison of two dependent or related proportion. Dependent or related proportion. So before, what was the proportion, and after, what is the proportion? Is there a significant improvement, significant change in the proportion of the severe illness, or is there any significant improvement in the proportion of the patients with the mild or moderate illness? This is what we are going to test it. So proportion has increased or decreased over a period of time. Two comparison of two dependent or related proportion. This is what we are doing it. We are assessing a baseline before, and we are assessing after, and we are expressing in terms of proportion before, and we are expressing proportion after. Okay, and see before and after, is there any significant change? Okay, comparison of two dependent proportions. This is called as McNemar's test. So McNemar's test is for comparing two dependent proportions. So what is the difference between this one and chi-square? Chi-square is for two variables, right? They are independent variables. So chi-square is for comparing two independent proportions, and McNemar is for comparing two dependent proportions. Chi-square and McNemar. What is the difference? Chi-square test is for comparing two independent proportions, and McNemar is for comparing two dependent proportions. Okay, this is the difference between these two. Fine. I think you got it. Now, comparison of two dependent groups for quantitative outcome. Comparison of two independent groups for quantitative outcome. How many groups are having? Two groups. What are those groups? Independent groups. Cases versus control. Intervention versus placebo. Exposed versus non-exposed. Male versus female. DM versus non-DM. Hypertension versus no hypertension. And two independent groups. There is no overlap between the groups. The groups are purely independent. And what to be compared? The quantitative outcome. What we discussed previously, it is for the categorical outcome. Now we are going to discuss quantitative outcome. Quantitative means hemoglobin, HbA1c. You have to compare the interleukin parameters. You have to compare the biochemical profile. You have to compare the R of T. You have to compare the L of T. So all are quantitative in nature between two groups. Between two groups, that's what I'm going to say. See this question. What is the difference in the level of NGAL between the patients with the CKD and normal subjects? How many groups are having? Two groups. What are the groups? Normal subjects, and CKD group, CKD patients. What is my outcome? Outcome is level of NGAL. NGAL is a quantitative marker, so it's quantitative variable. So we have variable 1, variable 2. What is my variable 1? It's a group. Two groups, independent groups, right? I have two independent groups. What do we compare? NGAL has to be compared. One is a categorical and the one is categorical quantitative. Fine. So this NGAL has to be compared between the groups, right? Between these categories. Two independent categories. That means what is analysis? Comparison of NGAL on average between CKD and normal subjects. This is what I am going to say. I am going to prove this NGAL is elevated in patients with the CKD when compared to normal subjects. That is my research hypothesis. I prove that this NGAL is elevated in patients with a CKD than normal subjects. That is my research hypothesis. I have two groups, normal and CKD groups. And what to be compared? NGAL has to be compared. NGAL is quantitative. Since NGAL is quantitative, what I should do? I should test the normality, right? I should test the normality. Whether the data follows normal or non-normal. If the NGAL follows normal distributions, I will express with the mean with the standard deviation. If the NGAL is not normal, we will express with the median with range. Fine. So either you will be expressing NGAL as mean with the standard deviation or median with the range. Okay, because you have two different statistical methods for if it is expressed as mean with the deviation and another statistical methods if it is expressed as median with the range. We'll see one by one. Here is a CKD groups, CKD patients and normal subjects, two groups, right? So NGAL is assessed. And let us suppose NGAL is normally distributed. How will I express it? I will express mean NGAL in patients with the CKD and mean NGAL in patients with the normal subjects. Because two groups, outcome is quantitative. Because it is follow normal distribution, I express this as mean with the standard deviation. Fine. What I should do? I want to compare these means, right? I want to compare the means and to prove that, or I want to say that, is there any difference in the mean NGAL between CKD patients and normal subjects? The comparison of normally distributed quantitative outcome between two independent groups, right? Between two independent groups, normally distributed quantitative, or in another way, I can say that comparison of two independent means. What is that test? That test is called as independent students t-test. Therefore, independent student t-test is a parametric test. Why? Because it is used when the data follows normal distribution. It is one of the tests from the parametric basket. Okay. Therefore, independent student t-test is to compare normally distributed quantitative outcome between two independent groups, or in other way, independent student t-test is used to compare two independent means. In that way, it is a non-parametric test. Let us suppose this data is not following normal distribution. How will I express it? We'll express with the median with range. Okay, so if it is not following normal distribution, what test you have to use it? You have to go with a non-parametric test. We'll see what is that non-parametric test. Let us suppose you have a CKD, normal subjects, NGAL is non-normal, not normally distributed. How will express it? We will express the median NGAL in CKD and median NGAL in normal with IQR, interquartile range, that is Q3, Q1 minus Q1, Q3, difference between Q1 and Q3, that is called as IQR, yesterday Dr. said. So I'll be calculating the median NGAL in CKD and median NGAL in normal subjects. Why? Because it is not normally distributed. Now what test I want? I want the test which is used for comparing non-normally distributed outcome between two independent groups. Or in other way, non-normally distributed outcome is how it will be expressed. It will be expressed as median. So for comparison of median between two independent groups, therefore it is a non-parametric test, or we want a test which is alternative for independent student t-test, that is called as Mann-Whitney U-test. So for Mann-Whitney U-test is a non-parametric alternative for independent student t-test. So these are the two tests we will be using for comparing the variables between two independent groups, independent student t-test and Mann-Whitney U-test. Okay, remember chi-square and Mann-Whitney, chi-square and McNemar. Second one is independent and Mann-Whitney U-test. It is for two independent groups, outcome variable to be whether it's normal or non-normal. The next scenario, comparison of two dependent groups for quantitative outcome. Here is a two dependent groups. You know what is dependent groups? Before and after, right? Classical example is before and after. Other examples also there, but we are not going to the details of it. Before and after. So two groups, that means two time points, right? Before and after, two time points, and outcome to be compared is quantitative, right? See how it can be done. See, this is a question. What is the change in serum CRP and TNF alpha among CKD patients on treatment? You saw serum CRP, it's a quantitative. TNF alpha, again inflammatory marker. Fine. So what I will show, I will say CKD patients on treatment. Fine. And after that, what I will do? I have CKD patients on treatment. Then I will assess the serum CRP and TNF alpha at diagnosis, first point of time. Again, to give the treatment. Okay. After 6 months. Okay. After the treatment, after 6 months of treatment, again I will assess the CRP and TNF alpha. Fine. So I will be assessing. Sir, can you mute that people, sir? Yeah, fine. Yeah, fine. So you are assessing at one point of time. Diagnosis. Fine. Yeah. So we will be assessing a diagnosis, TNF alpha and HSCRP. We will be assessing this one after 6 months also. Two time points on the same group of subjects. So what is the variable? Variable is quantitative in nature. Fine. Therefore, assessing serum CRP and TNF alpha at two time points from the same group of subjects. Outcome variable to be compared is quantitative, right? CRP and TNF alpha at baseline and TNF and CRP, it's a quantitative. Again, after 6 months, the same group of subjects. Fine. So what you want? Change in quantitative variable on average, that means before and after, right? Therefore, this analysis is called comparison of two dependent or related samples. Comparison of two dependent or relative samples for quantitative outcome. What is that one? Before and after. Let us suppose we are having the assessing at baseline before first time points. TNF alpha we are assessing at first time point. CRP also attending at first time, assessing at first time point. And second time point also we are assessing the CRP and TNF alpha two time points. Okay. Let us suppose if it is normally distributed, we will express as a mean at baseline, mean post, mean baseline, mean post. If it is not normally distributed, median at baseline, median post. Okay. So median at baseline, median at post. if it is not normally distributed. If it is normally distributed, mean at baseline, mean at post. After that, what you will do? Let us suppose it is normally distributed. Baseline, HSCRP and what is called TNF alpha. At baseline, it follows normal distribution. Okay, HSCRP and this one is following normal distribution at the second time point also. Both are normally distributed. And I want to compare this normally distributed outcome between two dependent groups. Between these two dependent groups, what is that called? That test is called as paired t-test. That test is called as paired t-test. Paired. It's a parametric test for comparing two dependent means before and after. Fine. Now the same thing, let us suppose it is not following normal distribution. If it is not following normal distribution, how will express it? We will express it as a median with range, median with IQR. Fine. Like this, median with IQR. And what we want? We want to compare this non-normally distributed outcome. Non-normally distributed outcome between two dependent groups, that means before and after. Median at baseline, median at post. It's a non-parametric test. Why? It's a non-normal distribution. So non-parametric test. Okay, what is that test? We want a non-parametric alternative for paired t-test. That is called as Wilcoxon's signed rank sum test. Therefore, Wilcoxon's signed rank sum test is a non-parametric alternative for paired t-test. Like independent student t-test and man-Whitney test, here paired t-test and Wilcoxon signed rank sum test. These are the two statistical methods which we are using for comparing two dependent means before and after, and Wilcoxon signed rank sum test is used for comparing two dependent medians. Fine. So first one discuss Kaiser-McNemar, independent student t-test and man-Whitney, and third pair is that paired t-test and Wilcoxon signed rank sum test. This is the another scenario. Now let us suppose comparison of more than two independent groups for quantitative outcome. For two independent groups for quantitative outcome, you know that. What is that? Either independent student t-test or man-Whitney test. Let us suppose you have more than two, 3 or 4 or 5, doesn't matter. More than two, any number of groups, independent groups. Two groups, independent and man-Whitney. Therefore, if it is more than two, we want an extension of independent student t-test or man-Whitney test. Fine. So extended test is required because two groups we know, independent student t-test and man-Whitney test based on the normality. But if you have more than two independent groups and you have to compare more than two independent groups, how to do it? Okay. Therefore, an extension of independent student t-test. I'll give an example. Is there any difference in the level of NGAL in relation to CKD patients with a different severity? Fine. I have different severity. What is my group? Severity is my group. Mild group, moderate group, severe group. Okay. And the second variable is NGAL. I want to compare this NGAL between more than two independent groups. Mild, moderate, and severe diseases are independent, right? So one group will have the mild disease, another group will have the moderate disease, and third one is the severe disease. I want to compare this level of NGAL. How many groups am I having? I have more than two independent groups, and I want to compare it. Fine. So similarly, another one is, this is what I said. It's a variable one is, I want to compare the NGAL between the mild, moderate, and severe. What I will do, I will check whether this variable's level of NGAL is normally distributed or not. Like whatever the way we did for independent student t-test. Fine. I will assess whether this quantitative variable is normal or not. If the data follows normal, I will express as mean with the standard deviation, otherwise median with range. Fine. And if it is normal distribution, what I will do? I will compare the mean NGAL between mild, moderate, and severe diseases. Or if it is non-normally distributed, I want to compare the median NGAL between mild, moderate, and severe diseases. Fine. This is what I want. We'll see one by one how to do it. I have three groups, right? Mild, moderate, and severe. Let us suppose NGAL is normally distributed. How will I express it? I will express a mean NGAL in mild disease, mean NGAL in moderate disease, and mean NGAL in severe disease. What is my hypothesis? My hypothesis would have higher the level, or the higher the disease, or the higher the severity. Right? The higher the level of NGAL in, when the higher the level in what is it called, the severe disease when compared to the mild or moderate. Okay, so the level will increase. The level of NGAL will increase when the severity increases. Okay, let us suppose if it is not, if it is normal distribution, I said we will express mean NGAL in group 1, mean NGAL in group 2, mean NGAL in group 3, and what I want to compare this NGAL between the three groups, or in other way, comparison of normally distributed NGAL. Say normally distributed is missing, so I'm sorry. Normally distributed NGAL between the CKD patients with a mild, moderate, and severe. Three groups, right? Mild, moderate, and severe. I want to compare the level of NGAL between these three groups. If it is two groups, what I can do? I can go with the independent student t-test, right? Here is more than 2. Therefore, this I'll skip it. So I'll skip this. This is I'm going to say, yeah, the same thing. Okay, comparison of normally distributed NGAL between the CKD patients with a mild, moderate, and severe disease. That test is called as one-way analysis of variance, or called as ANOVA. What is this ANOVA? ANOVA is an extension of independent student t-test. It is used for comparing more than 2 independent groups for a normally distributed outcome variable. Right? So one-way ANOVA is an extension of independent student data. Scenario is that you should have more than 2 groups. The data should, the outcome variable to be compared is quantitative, and it should follow normal distribution. In that way, it is an extension of independent student t-test. Fine. Now let us suppose it is not following normal distribution. Therefore, ANOVA is an extension of independent student t-test. This is what we told. It is an extension. Clear? Now let us suppose it is not following normal distribution. Fine. It is not following normal distribution. How will I express it? So median in mild, median NGAL in mild, median NGAL in moderate group, and median NGAL in severe disease. And I want to compare this non-normally distributed NGAL between the CKD patients with mild, moderate, and severe diseases. Okay, fine. What is non-parametric test? I want a non-parametric alternative for what? Non-parametric alternative for ANOVA, that is called as Kruskal-Wallis test. So Kruskal-Wallis test is a non-parametric alternative for ANOVA. For Kruskal-Wallis test is used to compare the non-normally distributed outcome between more than 2 independent groups. Or in other way, Kruskal-Wallis test is an extension of Mann-Whitney U-test. ANOVA is an extension of independent student t-test. So like Kruskal-Wallis is an extension of Mann-Whitney U-test. It is used for comparing what? More than 2 independent groups for a non-normally distributed variable, non-normally distributed outcome. Fine. Therefore, one more set, ANOVA with the Kruskal-Wallis. So remember, chi-square with a McNemar. Then next one, what is that called? Independent student T, Mann-Whitney. Paired t-test, Wilcoxon sign-Ransom test, ANOVA and Kruskal-Wallis. ANOVA and Kruskal-Wallis, more than 2 independent groups. ANOVA is an extension of independent student t-test. Kruskal-Wallis is an extension of Mann-Whitney U-test. The same way, so Kruskal-Wallis is an extension of Mann-Whitney U-test. Fine. So the comparison of more than 2 dependent groups. Now, 2 dependent groups, you know, 2 dependent groups, if it is normally distributed, paired t-test. Fine. If it is more than 2, so two dependent groups, what is the normal? It is a, what is that called? It is a independent, sorry, paired t-test. It is non-normal. What does it is? It is Wilcoxon sign-Ransom test. Now let us suppose we have more than 2 dependent groups. Let just like this. We want an extension of what? Paired t-test. We want an extension of Wilcoxon sign-Ransom. We want an we have an extension of independent student t-test, right? ANOVA. Similarly, we have an extension of what is that called? Man with new test, that is a Kruskal-Wallis test. Now let us suppose you have more than 2 time points from same group of subjects. Two time points is the paired t-test or Wilcoxon. If it is more than 2, we want an extension of paired t-test or Wilcoxon sign transfer test. What is that? We'll see. It will be like this. Okay, we are assessing at more than 2 time points. If it is 2 time points, is fine. You have the test. Paired t-test or Wilcoxon sign ransom test. Fine. If it is more than 2 time points, extension more than 2 dependent groups, more than 2 time points. Fine. So what do you want to assess? Change over a period of time. In paired t-test, change over a period of time. That is 2 time points. If it is more than 2 time points, change over a period of time. Okay, so time is a factor. So longitude changes. Time is a factor. Fine. So what is that? Quantitative variables. For example, I am assessing HSCRP and TNF alpha. I am assessing at 3 time points from the same group of subjects. Okay, I have only one group. That group I am assessing at 3 time points. Time point 1, time point 2, time point 3. Time 1 and 2, you know that it's a paired t-test. You have more than 2 time points from same group of subjects. Okay. Now, if it is normally distributed, I will express mean at first time point, mean at second point, mean at third point. If it is not normally distributed, I will express the median at baseline, median after 6 months, and median after 12 months. It is based on the normality of the data. Fine. Now let us see if the data follows normal distribution. Okay, data follows normal distribution. How will I express it? It's a mean with standard deviation at baseline, mean with the standard deviation after 6 months, and mean with the standard deviation after 12 months. Fine. Then what I want to know, I want a comparison of normally distributed outcome between more than 2 time points. Okay, comparison of normally distributed outcome between more than 2 time points. That is called as repeated measures of ANOVA or RM ANOVA. So for RM ANOVA is an extension of paired t-test. Okay, 2 time points we have the paired t-test, and if it's more than 2 time points and the data follows normal distribution, it is called as RM ANOVA. Fine. If it is not normally, this is what we told Wilcox. Now see, if it is not normally distributed, so this is what example I told. Okay, so this is what example I told. Let us suppose if it is non-normally distributed, so you will be assessing median at baseline. You will assess the median after 6 months. You will assess median after 12 months. Fine. So what I want a comparison of non-normally distributed outcome between more than 2 time points. More than 2 time points, I want to assess it. Fine. What is 2 time points? It's a Wilcoxon sign ransom test, right? Here is a more than 2 time points. What is that? It is a non-parametric repeated measures of ANOVA. That is called as Friedman test. The Friedman test is a non-parametric RM ANOVA, repeated measures of ANOVA, and it is also an extension of Wilcoxon's sign ransom test. So Friedman test is an extension of Wilcoxon's sign ransom test. Fine. Therefore, ANOVA was ANOVA with the Kruskal-Wallis and RM ANOVA with a Friedman test. So RM ANOVA is a parametric test, and this one, what is that called? Friedman test is a non-parametric, what is called a ANOVA. Non-parametric RM ANOVA. Fine. So now it's a 2 independent groups, more than 2 independent groups, 2 dependent groups, and more than 2 dependent groups. So independent student t-test Mann-Whitney for 2 independent groups, more than 2 independent groups on ANOVA, or the next one is Kruskal-Wallis. 2 dependent groups means paired t-test and Wilcoxon sign ransom test. More than 2 dependent groups, it is RM ANOVA on Friedman's test. Fine. And let us suppose the last one. Let us suppose this is the scenario. I had 2 groups. So most of the clinicians are involved this type of answer. I had 2 groups, group 1 and group 2. In both groups, you have the longitudinal follow. For example, you are assessing. For example, you are giving the intervention to one group and this intervention to the other group, two intervention group. And both group you are assessing at multiple time points. For example, you are assessing the CRP at different time points among the patients among the patients and the normal subjects, or the patients treated with the two different treatments. Okay, so what will happen? Here also there is a change. Change can happen in CRP over a period of time within the group. Here also it can happen. Longitudinal changes within the group. How we can assess the longitudinal changes within treatment A? By using RM-ANOVA or Friedman test. I will use one RM-ANOVA or Friedman test to assess, is there any longitudinal changes? What is the longitudinal changes? Is there any significant change in treatment A by using RM-ANOVA or Friedman test? And I will use another RM-ANOVA or Friedman test to assess, is there any change over a period of time in treatment group? But that is not our aim. What is our aim? Our aim is to find out, there may be a change in both group. Change may be in one group, first group, and change will be in group 2 also. Longitudinal change will be in group 1 and longitudinal change will be in group 2 also. Now the question, whether this change over a period of time is same or different between the groups. What is the change happening in group A over time? What is the change happening in group B over time? Where the change is more? More changes is happening in treatment B or treatment A. Therefore, here two factors. What are the factors? Factor means time is a factor and group is a factor. Fine. So what is the change? What is the difference in change in CRP over time between the groups? Or the change over time in CRP in treatment A, treatment B are same or not? Or in other way, the change is more in treatment A when compared to treatment B. Okay, so this type of analysis may be required. So what is that analysis? That analysis is called as two-way repeated measures of ANOVA. What is this two-way? There are two factors. What are the factors? One factor is the time, longitudinal changes within the group. Second factor is the treatment. Whether this change we are comparing between the group. Therefore, there are two factors. So that in this type of situation, the data should be analyzed by using two-way repeated measures of ANOVA. If this is the scenario, don't use a one-way ANOVA independently for group 1 and group 2. You should not do it like that. You do only two-way repeated measures of ANOVA. Two-way repeated measures of ANOVA will take care of this one-way repeated measures of ANOVA also. Therefore, if this is the scenario, don't do two one-way repeated measures of ANOVA. Do only one analysis, two-way repeated measures of ANOVA. It will take into consideration of one-way analysis, one-way RM ANOVA also. And the last scenario, then I will stop it. Okay. The last scenario, it's a relationship. Relation between two quantitative association we already discussed. The last one is a relationship between two quantitative variables. Okay. Then the question, association, we know that association means a categorical. Whenever you are talking about the relationship, it means that you have quantitative variables. So there is a question, is there any relationship between age and SBP? Is there a relationship between postprandial blood sugar and MDA, oxidative stress? Is there any relationship between HbA1c and interleukin parameter 6, IL-6? Is there any relationship between serum adiponectin with leptin levels in obesity and type 2 diabetes mellitus? See, in all these cases, first example, see, age and SBP, both are quantitative. PPBS and MDA, oxidative stress, both are quantitative. HbA1c with interleukin IL-6, both are quantitative in nature. Serum adiponectin and leptin level, both are quantitative in nature. Now, whenever you are analyzing, you are saying that is there any relationship? Is there any relationship between these two variables? That is called as correlation. Okay, so that is there any relation between two quantitative variables? Both are quantitative in nature. Okay, then we will be assessing whether it is normal or non-normal. Both are quantitative, right? Both are quantitative in nature. Whether these variables are normal or non-normal. If both variables are normal, we will be using Karl Pearson's correlation. If the variables are not normally distributed, we will be using non-parametric correlation, that is called as Spearman's rank correlation. Therefore, Karl Pearson's coefficient of correlation is a parametric correlation, and Spearman's rank correlation is a non-parametric correlation. It will be used when the data is non-normally distributed, either quantitative or ordinal. If the data is quantitative with non-normally distributed, or if we have the ordinal data, then we will be going with the Spearman's rank correlation. Otherwise, we will be using Karl Pearson's coefficient of correlation. It is a relation between two quantitative variables, correlation. Correlation means the relation between two variables, normally distributed, Karl Pearson's coefficient of correlation. Therefore, Karl Pearson's coefficient of correlation is called as parametric correlation, and second one is called as Spearman's rank correlation. It is called as a non-parametric correlation. Fine. With this, so I stop here. If you have any queries, yes, you are most welcome.
Sir, why the symbol T is given for t-test?
Right, yeah. So there's a question. What is it T stands for, right? That's what you are telling.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Fine. So whenever you are using any statistical methods, for example, you are using the chi-square, you are using T, you are using ANOVA. So that's what I told, because we are seeing only the p-value, right? We want to know only the p-value. What is the p-value? You're telling T. From where this p-values come? P-value has come from the test statistic. The test statistic means whenever you are using independent students t-test, okay, we will be calculating one statistic called a T. That is called a test statistic. Okay, so you will be calculating test statistic T. Whenever you are calculating the chi-square test, whenever you are performing the chi-square, we will be calculating a test statistics called as chi-square. Whenever you are using ANOVA test, we will be calculating a test statistics called F. So these are the test statistics. Based on the value we got it for this test statistic, so we will get a p-value. That means p-value is an outcome of the value we got it for the test statistics T. For example, whenever you are using independent student t-test, first I will calculate the T. T is equal to, there is a formula. By using this formula, I will calculate the value of T. Now I got the value of T as 2.5. Okay. If the value of T is greater than 1.96, okay, your p-value will be less than 0.05. I'll repeat again. The p-value is determined by the value of T in t-test. Similarly, in chi-square also, chi-square test, the p-value for the chi-square is determined by the value we got in for the chi-square. So in t-test, if the value of the T is greater than 1.96, okay, your p-value will be less than 0.05 if you are testing at 5% level of significance. Similarly, in chi-square, if the calculated chi-square, you have calculated the chi-square, first we are calculating the chi-square. If the calculated chi-square value is greater than 3.84, calculated chi-square is greater than 3.84, then your p-value will be less than 0.05. So this we will not tell you.
Okay.
So since you are interested only the p-value, So this p-value is an outcome of the t-value if it is a chi-square, if it's the t-test. P-value is an outcome of chi-square if you are using chi-square test. P-value in ANOVA is an outcome is based on the F-value in ANOVA. Fine. This value of this test statistics is determining the p-value. So there is a question. The association means you are mentioning correlation and regression analysis. No. Association, that is a relationship. That is separate session is there. Correlation is the relationship. It is not an association. Association, as I told you, association is meant for categorical variables. Correlation meant for quantitative variables. Correlation. Whenever you are using the word relation, it means that your variable is quantitative. If you are using the test of association, whenever you are talking about association, it implies that you have the categorical variables. Correlation cannot be associated for what is called categorical variables. Correlation is for what is called quantitative variables or ordinal variables, not more than that. That is the one. Sir, can we do parametric test for non-normally distributed data given the n is more than 300? Definitely no. See, once you are testing the normality, okay, so there is a chance if the sample size increases, there is a chance it follows normal distribution. Let us suppose if we have 300 sample size, okay, for example, you are assessing the interleukin parameters or HSCRP of 300 patients with psoriasis. Let us suppose we have the psoriasis, patients with psoriasis, 300 patients, you are assessing the HSCRP or IL-6. We found that the data is not following normal distribution. Okay, then what you have to do? You cannot use parametric test directly because data is non-normal. No question of parametric test directly applying to that non-normally distributed data. What you can do, you can normalize the data. This is the second level. Okay, you can normalize the data. How you can normalize the data? You can transform the data to the logarithmic value. Okay, you convert the data to the logarithmic value. You take the log of all values. Then when you are converting these log values to the logarithmic values, there is a high chance for following the normal distribution. Then after converting to the logarithmic values, log conversion, okay, logarithmic transformation, then that data of the logarithmic value, there is a high chance to follow normal distribution. Then you can perform the normal distribution for that converted data. But the data as such, if it is not following normal distribution, without conversion, if it is not normally distributed, you should not use parametric test.
Sir, according to the central limit theorem, when the sample size is larger than 30, normality is not a crucial prerequisite for a standard T hypothesis test.
Absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong concept.
But in a paper, Payosena and senior in 2018, they did a test for checking the parametric statistics, and their results report that a sample size greater than 85, we can go with parametric test due to its robustness.
No, that is a myth. We would say it's a myth. So tomorrow when you're talking sample size, we will tell that absolutely it's a myth because there is a. So people have said that 30, more than 30, yes, it follows normal distribution. Okay, so less than 30, it is a small sample size. So there is a concept of small sample size and large sample size. How small is small? How large is large? It is a subjective feature.
Yes, the title of the paper is How Small is Big, Sample Size and Skewness.
Yeah, that is what I tell you. Because as the biological science is concerned, because that is there is a specific objective test that I will tell. There is a two test that we have been using for testing the normality. That is called as a Kolmogorov-Smirnov test. One test is called Kolmogorov-Smirnov test, and second one is a Shapiro test. These are the two subjective or the statistical methods we are using for test the normality.
Yes,
so based on the sample size, that's what one question is. Even if it's 300, the sample size 300, sometimes some biological variables, it may not follow normal distribution. At the same time, if the sample size is 20, sample size may be 20. So there is a chance for following the normal distribution. So literally speaking, if you're just going with a very strict condition for the normality, we have to test for the normality based on the thumb rule. These are called thumb rules. People used to say if the standard deviation is less than the mean, so we can go with the parametric test. So there is a lot of situations in which where the mean is standard deviation is less than mean, then also the data will not follow normal distribution. So in that case, especially in the biological sciences, what we should recommend, either first you test the normality of the data. If it is not following the normal distribution, we'll just transform the data by using logarithmic principles. So we are saying if it is converting the logarithmic values, so there's a high chance for normal distribution, then we are safe. So that is the method, that is the most robust methodology we should use as far as the medical research is concerned, because we are the most precise researchers. When compared to other researchers, we are the most precise researchers. And as far as statisticians is concerned, we are the most precise statisticians when compared to other specialties. That is what we are biostatisticians. So what we used to do, we'll check for the normality. If it is not following the normal distribution, whatever may be the sample size, we'll convert into logarithmic values. We will normalize the data. After that, we'll perform the analysis. That is the most robust method. That is the way to analyze the biological data. That is what we used to recommend.
Thank you, sir.
One more question. There is a question where ANCOVA and MANOVA is used. ANCOVA means analysis of covariance. So yesterday we discussed. So someone has asked how to deal with this covariance. Okay, this analysis of covariance, ANCOVA's analysis of covariance. So you have the covariates. Okay, how to identify the effect of covariates, that is called as ANCOVA. When you are talking about MANOVA, multivariate analysis of variance. So in multivariate analysis, when you are talking about a multivariate, you have more than two outcome categories. For example, you are saying that you have the dead or alive binary, right? So instead of that, you should have more categories as an outcome variable. That is the concept of more than two categories for the dependent variable outcome. That is the concept of multivariate. So if we have more than two categories in the outcome variable, that time only we are just introducing the concept called multivariate. So people are using multivariate logistics instead of multiple. That's the next step to what I will discuss. Instead of multiple logistic regression, multiple linear. People are using multivariate linear regression, multivariate logistic regression. That is wrong. That is a multiple. Multivariate concept means we have more outcome categories. That is what is called multivariate concept. So in that case, you are using multivariate analysis of variance. That is called MANOVA. Where should use a regression analysis? That is tomorrow. There is a separate session that time we will discuss. Is there any specific condition where non-normal distributed data is converted to normal distribution data by taking log instead of considering non-parametric? Yes, definitely you can go with. So people used to say, and parametric test, as you know, parametric test is more robust than non-parametric test, more stronger. It doesn't mean that non-parametric test is not valid. Yes, non-parametric test is also well valid. So what is the problem? Being a clinician, you are more focused, you are more attached towards mean, right? It will be very easy for interpretation. And a lot of further statistical analysis is also possible if the data is normally distributed. So further statistical analysis required. A lot of other sophisticated advanced statistical analysis are required. Those type of analysis are limited if the data is not following normal distribution. Fine. So if the data is not normally distributed, you can go with a non-parametric test, no problem. But the problem is that you want to add on some more statistical analysis to get the answer for your research question, and some more analysis are also required to take a decision whether to accept or reject your null hypothesis. The analysis is limited. So in that case, definitely it is better to convert to logarithmic value, normalize it. Therefore, the data follows normal distribution. So the parametric test you can do it, and lot of advanced statistical methods are there for normally distributed data than non-normally distributed data. In that case only, so you will be using what is called a normalization. So we can go with a non-normal, what's it called, non-parametric test as well. There is no specific condition. It is based on what is the requirement for you. Can we remove the outliers and we run the normality test and see? Can we remove the outliers and see? There is a concern. So if we feel that there is some outliers, so we are seeing it. Without telling anyone, you will delete it. We know that it's a problem maker. It's a problem maker. So without our students also, because we know students will not tell. Slightly now, why unnecessary we have to tell to the sir, okay, we will delete it. Before handing out to the gate or before handing over to us, they themselves is delete it and they will hand it over to us. But that is a data manipulation. Please don't do it. That's a reality. So when we analyze this, we will say when we analyze one data on NGAL, I'm telling, we got a one extreme value. NGAL is almost 2,100 something. We got one extreme value. So that's the reality. First is that whether it's a typographic error. This outlier can happen by using typographic error, but actually it's not a typographic error. Typo error, no. It's a reality. Again, the sample is performed 2 times or 3 times. So we are getting the almost same value. It's a reality. You should not delete this one. You should not. That's a reality. If you are deleting, means what you are going to do, you are manipulating the data. What you have to do the analysis with outlier and do the analysis without outlier. That's called sensitivity. How much this outlier is sensitive towards the result. What is our approach? Our approach is that we'll do the analysis with outlier and without outlier, and we will report how much is sensitive this outlier on result. How much is it influencing, this outlier is influencing on the outcome or the result is concerned. So please don't delete it. Only thing you have to perform 2 analysis, one with outlier and one without outlier, and see what is the difference. And you just report how much is sensitive this outlier on your result. How much, how your result is changing with outlier and without outlier. You have to report like that.
Sir, why this name chi-square is given, chi?
Which one? That is called the test statistics. So that's what I told you. It's a test statistic. So we are using the test as a chi means it is called observed frequency minus expected. That means we are not telling the formula O minus E divided by. It is a test statistic.
Symbol of the symbol of actually comparison.
It's a Greek letter. It's a Greek letter. Chi-square is a Greek letter.
The scientist name.
Yeah, no, it's a Greek letter.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we can conclude now.